Welcome to this video where I will be talking about this car, a 2013 Lotus Exige V6. It's quite a unique car with an interesting backstory, which also has had some significant upgrades done to it, which I will be talking about shortly. Many of those that are watching this video might already be familiar with the third generation Lotus Exige, but for those of you who don't know about it, I'll just give a quick recap of the model history. The first and second generation Exige were basically a more track-focused hardtop version of the Lotus Elise. These were equipped with a 4-cylinder 1.8-liter engine, initially sourced from Rover and later on in the S2 from Toyota. For the third generation Exige, it went through significant changes that made it into a standalone model, as opposed to a sportier version of the Elise in the previous generations. The track and body was widened and lengthened. The central tub remained the same, but it got a whole new rear subframe to accommodate a much larger engine. A 3.5-liter V6 that had been used in the bigger Lotus Evora at that point. This engine is a Toyota engine that you will find in the US spec Camry, several Lexus models and so on. In the Evora S and the third generation Exige, it was used together with a Harrop supercharger, initially producing 350 horsepower. So from the get-go, this was a very powerful and special car, a lightweight performance machine with a very high power-to-weight ratio. It weighs between 1100 and 1200 kilos depending on spec, or less than 2,500 pounds. As the third generation Exige was continually developed during its production run, the power was incrementally increased. The Ultimate Final Edition Cup 430 had 436 horsepower and weighed less than 1100 kilos, so a very potent driving machine indeed. This specific car was one of the very first cars to ever leave the production line at Heathrow back in November of 2012. According to Lotus, it is the 5th regular production example ever built. It was originally shipped to a German Lotus dealer in Leipzig in January of 2013, where it was sold to a local customer. As far as I've been able to gather, it was owned for around 3 years before returning to Lotus Leipzig in 2016. It was then purchased by a Danish car enthusiast who imported it to Denmark and owned it for around a year or so, before trading it for a radical track car at a dealership in southern Sweden. I subsequently purchased it from the dealer in southern Sweden and imported it to Norway in April of 2019, making me the third overall owner of the car since 2013. At that point, the car had already been upgraded by Komo-Tec with a much sought after kit called the EX430, which raises the power output from 350 to 430 horsepower. So it was already a very rapid car from the onset of my ownership. It was generally a reliable car, although I did have some niggles with it throughout the years, most of which had to do with the auxiliary belt that runs the supercharger, the water pump, the alternator and the AC pump. It broke not once but twice. Both times it was due to a seized pulley or a wheel, which is a weak point. They were swapped and upgraded to stronger units, and it was running just fine for a long while. And then disaster struck. As it turns out, this Toyota V6 engine, with its impressive reliability record, it isn't really suited for track driving with high G-forces. It uses a normal wet oil sump without baffles from the factory, which is okay for regular cars. But the Exige is equipped with a very sticky tire and is supposed to be able to handle track days with ease. At least that was what I thought initially. When using this V6 engine on track, the oil sloshes around in the sump, and especially in fast right-hand corners, it tends to slosh away from the oil pickup, causing oil starvation. I was tracking this car only once or twice per year, so I didn't even consider the possibility that the engine could suffer any long-term damage from it. That was until the engine failed in a very spectacular way in 2022. I was on one of many nice road trips with the car and was exiting a roundabout, accelerating in second gear. The asphalt was wet, so the grip was limited and the traction control system kicked in just for a second or two, cutting the throttle. As the grip regained and I started accelerating again, there was a loud boom from the engine bay. and smoke bellowed out from everywhere. The engine had actually ejected one of its pistons through the block, making a giant hole, as well as a big mess inside the engine and the oil sump. The entire engine was toast. At that point I was really fed up, and for a moment seriously considered just giving it up and selling it with the broken engine. But on the other hand, this was without doubt the most exciting car I had ever owned, and probably ever would own. This was kind of my Countach dream car in many ways, so I instead decided not only to fix it, but to take it to another level entirely. I therefore broke the piggy bank and had the car shipped to Germany to Komo-Tec, who very helpfully sorted out the car and put together a completely superb package. Not only was the engine completely rebuilt, it was made stronger than ever with forged pistons and connecting rods, ARP crankshaft bolts and head bolts. They also rebuilt and strengthened the gearbox and added a Quaife limited slip differential, which the car really should have had from the factory all along, and installed a stronger clutch from the 400 series. And last but not least, the car got a complete EX460 kit, which lifts the power even higher from 430 horsepower to 455 horsepower, as well as giving it much better reliability thanks to a specially developed charge cooler that sits underneath the supercharger, fed by a front-mounted heat exchanger. This is important as the model initially came without a charge cooler, making it prone to heat soak when pushed hard. The 460 kit also utilizes a set of specially developed headers, a downpipe and sports catalyst. And added to the car is also a Komo-Tec stainless steel exhaust with carbon tips, making it a complete Komo-Tec exhaust system from the engine and out. This setup also gives the V6 engine an incredible howl, while at the same time keeping within the decibel limits of my local track. It was especially nice to see the owner of Komo-Tec, Daniel Koblicek, perform the finishing touch of adding the super nice EX460 plaque on top of the supercharger. As an added bonus, the EX460 kit is also TUV Approved in Germany, which means it can be made certified and road legal in the EU and EEC countries, with all the extra bits and pieces and performance increase. This was especially important as I would not like to have a car professionally tuned only to have it not be roadworthy in my home country. After going through all the due processes with fees and local certifications, I was able to have the EX460 package written into its certification papers, making this a fully road legal Komo-Tec Exige 460. As of making this video, there are only 5 Exige V6s in Norway, whereas this is the only 460, which is very cool. Another thing that has also been done to this car is a roadster conversion. This enables you to swap out the hardtop for a soft top, which then can be easily removed to get a full roadster driving experience, just as in an Elise. And trust me, on a sunny day there is nothing sweeter than driving this thing on a windy road, feeling the breeze and hearing that insane V6 engine sound right behind you. And then, when you feel like it, you can convert it back to a race-ready coupe in a few minutes by putting the hardtop back on. It's really a jack of all trades in that regard. And even though I love the original design of the wheels, I just didn't fancy the color. Black wheels on a black car tends to just disappear. Instead, I put on some custom-made signature SV104s, which not only look spectacular in silver on this car, but being forged are also a bit lighter than the original cast wheels. I wanted a wheel design that looked like it could have come like that from the factory, but at the same time giving it a true supercar presence. In a way, it kinda reminds me of a baby 911 GT3. So this is how the car looks like after 5 years of continuous development and improvements. A full-blown street-legal Komo-Tec EX460 with a forged engine, strengthened gearbox, a limited slip diff and a beefier clutch, combined with a clean supercar looks you only get with the early third generation cars from 2012 to 2016 that had the rear glass hatch and where all the body panels were in the same color, giving it a real cohesive impression. In my mind, this is the perfect Exige, the best of both worlds. Thanks for watching.